My mother-in-law came to stay after surgery and left behind a broken marriage, a betrayal, and a plan to steal my home. But they both underestimated me. It started, like so many things do, with good intentions. Eileen, my mother-in-law, had slipped on her icy front steps that winter and shattered her knee. Karen, my wife, didn't even pause before offering our home while Eileen recovered. "Just a few weeks," she said. "It's what family does." And I agreed. I wasn't thrilled, but I didn't fight it. That's the kind of man I've always tried to be. Helpful, patient, reasonable. At first, it really was temporary. I helped set up the guest room. Eileen grumbled about the mattress and asked for a firmer pillow, but otherwise, things were fine. She mostly watched TV, flipped through magazines, and slept a lot. Karen cooked for her. I stayed out of the way. But by the third week, Eileen was moving around just fine and not moving out. Instead, she began rearranging things. Literally and figuratively. She reorganized our kitchen cabinets. She started commenting on my work hours, my clothes, my habits. When I came home late from a supplier meeting, she greeted me with a smirk, burning the midnight oil or something else. It was the tone, that subtle, knowing jab that made your skin prickle. Karen brushed it off when I brought it up. "She's just bored," she said. "Don't take it personally." But boredom didn't explain the whispering behind closed doors. The sudden change in how Karen looked at me, more distant, more cautious. Or the new password on her phone. We'd never kept secrets. Until then. One night, after everyone went to bed, I walked past the guest room and heard voices. Eileen and Karen. The door wasn't fully shut. I heard my name. I paused. "I'm telling you, he's hiding something," Eileen said. "You should ask to see the bank accounts. The real ones." I felt the air leave my lungs. Karen's voice, softer. "Mom, he's never lied to me before. And that's how you know he's good at it." It was like someone had knocked on the inside of my skull. That same night, I started checking everything. Our finances, my email, the house deed. Nothing was out of place yet. But now I was awake. And once you're awake, you stop dreaming that everything is fine. It only got worse. 2 weeks later, Karen accidentally called me by a different name during breakfast. She turned red, claimed it was nothing. Said she'd been watching a show with a character named Greg. We don't even own cable. I checked our joint credit card. 2 charges at a hotel downtown. A place we hadn't stayed in since our anniversary 3 years ago. Then I saw the texts. I wasn't snooping. She'd left her iPad unlocked on the couch, and a message popped up from a contact named Carla. But the message read, "Tell him the conference ran long. I'll see you in 20. The location data on the iPad said she wasn't at a conference. She was at the hotel. Again, she was seeing someone, while her mother was in our home. I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her that night. I kissed her goodnight like I always did, even though it made my stomach twist. Instead, I met with a lawyer. Quietly. The lawyer was sharp, discreet, and thorough. We combed through everything. The house, thankfully, was still in my name, purchased 2 years before we married. But Karen had been making inquiries. I found emails she'd sent to a local notary asking about spousal entitlement and transfer of ownership after separation. Eileen's fingerprints were all over it. They were building a plan. Paint me as emotionally distant, financially deceptive, maybe even cheating, and take the house. I was to be the villain in a story they could present to friends, family, and most importantly, to court. But I don't play the role they assign me. I play the long game. I started documenting everything. Saving texts, printing bank statements, recording conversations when legally permitted. I even installed a small audio monitor by the kitchen and caught Eileen suggesting Karen move some of our valuables into a safe space in case he tries to hide assets. Every move they made, I mirrored. Quietly, carefully. And then, one day, I didn't come home. I stayed at a friend's cabin out of town and sent Karen a short text, "Staying at Dave's. Need some time." She didn't respond. But the next morning, she transferred $6,000 from our joint account into one under her name. And that's when I knew it was time to end the illusion on my terms. I didn't tell Dave much, just that I needed a few days away and that I'd pay him back for the cabin rental in full. He tossed me the keys without asking for a thing. "Stay as long as you need," he said. He was one of the few people left I trusted without question. Out at the cabin, things were still. No sounds of dishes clanking, no passive-aggressive coughs from Eileen in the hallway, no sudden silence when I entered a room. I made a fire, brewed strong black coffee, and opened my laptop. I wasn't running. I was organizing. First, I updated the lawyer. Sent him copies of all recent bank transfers, including the one Karen made just hours after I left. He flagged it instantly, said it looked like asset displacement in anticipation of marital separation. Good. That would go into the file. Next, I set up a private checking account in my name only and had my next paycheck rerouted. I changed all passwords, withdrew access from all shared documents and utilities, and secured my retirement accounts. Quiet moves. Legal moves. She wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. Back home, Karen texted once. Let me know when you want to talk. That was it. No, I miss you. No, are you okay? Just a placeholder. A test balloon to see if I'd drift back. I didn't reply. The next day, Eileen called me. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was dry and dramatic. I told Karen you'd pull something like this eventually. Don't make things harder than they have to be. Come back and be civil. Civil. I'd been nothing but civil, even as they plotted behind my back. Later that week, I returned home, not to make peace, but to collect documents. I walked in during the middle of the afternoon. Karen was on the phone in the kitchen. She froze when she saw me. I didn't say a word. I went to the office and pulled out the folders. Insurance, car title, house maintenance, her signed prenuptial agreement. Yes, we had a prenup. She probably forgot, or thought I had. Karen followed me in. What are you doing? She asked. Getting organized, I said calmly. You might want to do the same. She frowned. We can still fix this. I looked at her, the same woman I had loved for nearly 8 years. But something in her eyes was gone. Whatever we once had, it had been eroded by whispers, lies, and opportunism. And now, I saw it for what it really was. I think we passed that point when your mother started digging through our mail, I said. Or maybe when you booked hotel rooms under your maiden name. She opened her mouth, then closed it. A beat passed. You went through my stuff? You left it open on your iPad. I wasn't snooping. I was waking up. She didn't deny it. That told me more than any confession. Eileen appeared behind her, standing in the doorway like a ghost. You're blowing this all out of proportion, she said. This is your ego talking. No, I replied. This is my survival instinct. They didn't try to stop me as I left with 2 duffel bags and a file box of records. I didn't slam the door. I didn't raise my voice. But as I closed the trunk of my car, I saw Karen through the window. She wasn't crying. She was just watching, planning her next move. That night, I emailed my lawyer the final batch of evidence. He sent back a draft, petition for divorce, grounds, infidelity, and financial misconduct. Clean, direct, supported. I signed it electronically. 2 days later, she was served. Karen tried to call me twice. I didn't answer. Then came the emails, long, winding, tearful apologies, saying she was confused, manipulated, that her mother had pressured her, that I didn't understand how hard it had been. But they all lacked the one thing that mattered, accountability. And then came the panic. Eileen began showing up at places I used to go. My old barber, the community center, even the post office. One day, I found a note stuck under my windshield. You're making a mistake. We never meant to hurt you. I kept it. The lawyer said we were in strong standing. The prenup protected my assets, but her behavior, the affair, the transfer of funds, gave us leverage to keep the house and even have her cover part of the legal costs. The court date was set for 3 months out. In the meantime, I got an apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, but quiet, clean, and mine. I slept like I hadn't in years. I even reconnected with my daughter from my first marriage, Melissa. She came over one evening with her husband and our 2 grandkids. We played cards, made hot dogs, and laughed harder than I expected. Melissa told me later, "You seem lighter, Dad. Like something lifted off you." I didn't tell her what it was. But she wasn't wrong. Back at the house, Karen was unraveling. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that the man she had been seeing, the one from the hotel, had ghosted her once she told him I filed for divorce and that the house wasn't going to be hers. And Eileen? She slipped on the same stairs where she'd faked that first injury. Karma, I suppose. Broke her hip this time, for real. She was sent to a rehab facility across state lines. The house remained in my name. The court agreed to my terms. Karen moved out 2 weeks after the final ruling. No alimony. No share in my pension. No rights to the property. Just silence. And that was enough. The day the court finalized the divorce, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't celebrate. I just went home, to my small apartment with the overworked radiator and creaky kitchen cabinets, and sat at the table for a long time, staring at the papers. It was done. The house was officially mine. Karen had no claim to it. The judge had acknowledged the prenup, her affair, and the financial manipulation as grounds for a clean split. No assets to divide. No debts left on my name. No strings attached. But that didn't mean there weren't scars. For 5 years, I'd built a life with her. I'd trusted her. I'd even tried, in my own quiet way, to win over her mother, not because I liked Eileen, but because I loved Karen. And in the end, it hadn't mattered. After the dust settled, the silence that followed felt different. Not peaceful, just empty. There was no routine anymore. No one asking what I wanted for dinner. No gentle sighs across the bed. No one waiting up for me if I worked late. At first, I didn't realize how much noise Karen had brought into my life, and how quiet it had become without her. Still, I didn't regret anything, especially not how I handled it. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't begged. I hadn't fought dirty. I'd simply told the truth and let the evidence speak. A few weeks later, I drove past the old house, not to check on it, but because it was on the way to my dentist. I saw a for sale sign in the yard. Fresh mulch, new shutters. Someone had moved in quickly. I smiled a little. New beginnings for everyone, I guessed. Back at the apartment, I started building a new version of my life. Deliberately, carefully. I bought a second-hand woodworking bench from a man who'd just retired from teaching shop class. I turned the extra bedroom into a modest workshop. On weekends, I made birdhouses, small shelves, and once, a porch swing I gave to Melissa. She and her husband came by more often now. So did the grandkids. We'd sit on the floor playing Uno, or walk to the park with peanut butter sandwiches. Those moments did more for my soul than anything therapy could offer. One night, Melissa asked if I'd ever start dating again. I shrugged. Not sure. I think I like my own company a little too much these days. She smiled and didn't push. A few months passed, and then I got the letter. It wasn't from Karen. It was from Eileen. A formal envelope, handwritten, with my name spelled in full, Mr. Harold Brennan. Inside was a short note. Harold, I know you likely won't respond. That's fair. But I wanted to say this anyway. I was wrong. About you. About what I did. You didn't deserve it, and I know that now. Karen isn't speaking to me anymore. I suppose that's the price I pay. Take care of yourself. Eileen. No apology for the manipulation. No real admission. But still, the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd ever get from her. I placed the letter in the back of a drawer, under some old receipts. I never replied. Karen never contacted me again either. But every now and then, I'd hear from people who knew her. I never asked for updates, but they came anyway. She's working part-time at a boutique now. She moved in with her aunt. She was asking around about you. Wanted to know if you were seeing anyone. I always nodded politely and changed the subject. Because the truth was, I was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. There's something about being betrayed that strips away all illusions. Not just about other people, but about yourself. You see what you're made of when the people closest to you try to take everything. And I saw that I could bend, but I wouldn't break. I started volunteering on weekends, helping elderly neighbors with repairs. Fixed 2 mailboxes, a gutter, and 1 very squeaky screen door. People smiled more when you helped without a price tag. It reminded me that not everyone takes advantage of kindness. One afternoon, I came home to find a small basket on my doorstep. No note, no name, just a basket of cookies and a carved wooden plaque. On the back, it said, "Kind men are rare. Don't stop being one." I never found out who left it, but I kept the plaque. It's strange what you start to notice when the noise dies down. The squeak in the floorboard near the kitchen, always there, but never really heard. The drip in the bathroom faucet. The soft hum of the refrigerator at night, like it's breathing. You also start noticing things in yourself. How you hold your coffee mug a little tighter in the morning. How you pause longer at green lights. How you sleep deeper. Not necessarily longer, but without the tightness in your chest that used to sit with you like an unwanted guest. 6 months had passed since the divorce, and life had become steady again. Not exciting, not extraordinary, but mine. The apartment was still modest, but I'd made it feel like home. I had my reading chair, a radio that still played cassette tapes, and a small table with just 2 chairs. I liked it that way. Quiet. Simple. Melissa and the grandkids were regular visitors. I had dinner with them every Sunday. even if it was just reheated stew and store-bought pie. We didn't talk about Karen, not out of anger, but because we didn't need to. That chapter was closed. One Sunday after dinner, Melissa brought over an old photo album. "Found this in Mom's things," she said. "Thought you might want it." It was a mix of old holidays, vacations, birthdays, snapshots of a different life. In one photo, Karen was smiling in the backyard, holding a sparkler on the 4th of July. I looked at the picture for a long time. Not because I missed her, but because I realized I didn't. It's a quiet relief, the moment you understand you no longer hurt. That same week, something unexpected happened. A letter came from my old employer, the construction supply company where I'd worked for over 15 years. I'd left the job a year before the divorce, taking early retirement with a small package and full pension. But the letter wasn't about work. It was from Martin, one of the company's co-owners. He wrote, "We've got a new mentorship program. Retired managers helping younger team leads. Part-time, remote mostly, flexible. Your name came up. Thought you might be interested." I hadn't thought much about going back to work, even part-time. But something about the idea appealed to me. I missed being useful. I missed teaching, shaping younger folks who didn't just want paychecks but wanted to understand how things worked. I called Martin the next morning. "Still using that same grumpy mug on your ID?" he joked. "Still writing like it's 1984? I shot back. He laughed. "So what do you say?" I said yes. 3 days later, I was on a Zoom call with a kid named Jonah, 27, sharp, good instincts, but overwhelmed. "I've never managed anyone before," he said. "I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," I said. "Because you care. That's half the battle." And just like that, I had purpose again. I only worked 5 or 6 hours a week, but it gave me structure. And more than that, it gave me proof that what I'd built in life still mattered. That experience still had value. Then, one morning in late spring, while I was in the hardware store picking up sandpaper and wood glue, I saw her. Karen. She was standing in the paint aisle, holding 2 color swatches, talking to a man I didn't recognize. Not the same guy from before. This one looked younger, a little too polished, like a man trying to dress above his station. I could have turned around, walked the other way, but I didn't. I approached slowly, deliberately. She noticed me first. Her eyes widened. The man with her looked confused, then annoyed. "Harold," she said, like a question more than a greeting. "Karen," I replied calmly. The silence stretched. "I see you're doing well," she finally said, as if testing me. "I am," I said. "Really well, actually." She nodded. "That's good." No apology. No regret in her voice. Just tension, like a string pulled too tight. The man beside her took a half step forward, as if to assert something. I looked at him and smiled. "Hope your paint project turns out all right," I said. And with that, I walked past them, picked up my glue, and paid. It wasn't satisfying in a dramatic way. There were no insults, no scenes. But it was satisfying in a deeper sense, because I felt nothing. And that kind of peace is rare. Later that week, Melissa called. "You okay?" she asked. "Heard you ran into her." "I'm fine," I said. And I meant it. "Good," she said. "Because I think you're doing great. Really, I'm proud of you." I don't remember the last time anyone had said that to me, without strings, without agenda. It stuck with me. That Saturday, I built a bookshelf and donated it to the local library. One of the librarians gave me a thank you card. Inside, she wrote, "You fixed something here. Thank you." And I realized that's what I'd been doing all along, fixing things. Quietly, patiently. Not just shelves and chairs, but parts of myself. I didn't need to rebuild the life I had before. I just needed to build something that felt solid again. Summer in our town is always the same. Hot sidewalks, kids riding bikes barefoot, and neighbors watering their lawns like it's an Olympic event. But this year, it felt different. Not because of the weather, but because I was finally living without looking over my shoulder. The legal mess was long over. The noise, the lies, the slow unraveling of trust, all of it was behind me. Now my life had shape again. I'd found purpose in mentoring. I'd carved out small routines. I even started walking every morning at the same time, waving to the same folks with the same dogs. One morning, as I walked past the park, I saw Eileen. She was on a bench near the path, cane leaning against the side, hair tucked into a floral sun hat. She looked thinner, frail even. A part of me wanted to keep walking. Another part, the one that never learned to ignore people, made me stop. She noticed me and stiffened. "I won't keep you," she said quickly. Just resting. I nodded, unsure what to say. It's quiet now, she added, glancing around. Quieter than I thought it would be. I took a slow breath. You living nearby? With my sister, she said. After the rehab. Karen stopped coming around. I didn't reply. She fidgeted with her cane. She thought I had answers. Thought I knew what was best. I thought I did too. That's the thing about control, I said. It doesn't last long when it's built on lies. Her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite regret. I didn't mean to ruin your marriage, she said softly. I know, I replied. But you did. We sat there for a moment in silence. Then I stood up, nodded politely, and walked on. I didn't look back. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. Inside, a folded note from Karen. I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, but I need to say this. I didn't see what you were doing for us until it was gone. I let her voice become louder than yours. And I let someone else's attention convince me I was missing out. You were always steady. And I confused steady with boring. That was my mistake. There was no request, no apology for the affair, just recognition. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into a drawer. I didn't need to reread it. I didn't need closure from her. But something about it, that quiet admission, felt like the final page in a book I'd long since stopped reading. Jonah, the young manager I mentored, got promoted. He sent me a photo of his new office, captioned, "Couldn't have done it without your quiet advice, old man." I laughed. He wasn't wrong. Then one Sunday, Melissa came over with her youngest in tow. While we were setting the table, she looked around and said, "You ever think about moving again? Getting something bigger?" I looked around my little apartment. It was modest, sure, but it was clean. It was calm, and it was entirely mine. "No," I said. "I think this is just right." But she smiled like she knew something I didn't. "You say that, but I saw you talking to Carol last week," she teased. "Carol from the church group? You didn't have to fix her back porch, Dad. She's got a son who's a contractor." She asked. I said, feigning innocence. "I had the tools." Melissa shook her head. "Just don't let her bake you into a second marriage. I like the version of you that gets to take naps whenever he wants." We laughed. It felt good to laugh without bitterness. Later that night, I sat on the porch of the apartment building, sipping tea and listening to the cicadas. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to gratitude, not for what happened, but for what didn't. I could have let anger eat me up. I could have played their game, yelled, fought, tried to take them down with me. But I didn't. Instead, I walked away with my name, my house, my integrity, and something they never expected me to keep. Peace. The house looked different once I knew what they had planned for it. Same windows, same white shutters, same little crack on the front steps. But after the truth surfaced, after I knew they had tried to take it from me, every corner of that house felt like part of a battleground I'd quietly won. I'd never been one for revenge. That was never my way. But justice? That mattered. Fairness. Doing things by the book. Because when you're the one being framed, the only thing that saves you is the truth. Written, signed, notarized, and dated. By the time I filed for divorce, I already had everything I needed. My lawyer, a man named Frank who wore old suits and spoke like a history professor, called my folder of evidence a masterpiece of patience. "You didn't just catch them," he said. "You buried them, politely." It was the surveillance footage that did it. Not dramatic spy stuff, just quiet, uneventful clips from a neighbor's doorbell cam. One showed my wife, Beth, getting into a Lexus that didn't belong to anyone in our family. Another showed her returning alone hours later, trying not to be seen. The man, son of a partner at the firm we did business with, introduced to Beth by her mother, Susan, during some charity gala. I didn't even know he existed until I saw his name on a lease, the one he and Beth had signed in secret for a condo an hour outside town. Their plan had been simple. Make me look like the problem. Fake an affair. Leak a few texts from a coworker Beth's mother had fabricated with a burner phone. Claim I was aggressive and neglectful. Push for a quiet divorce. Take the house and, if they could, a chunk of my savings. But they forgot who I was. I had been running operations for their company for 5 years. I knew how they moved money, how they buried paperwork, how they whispered in boardrooms and smiled in public. So while they plotted their exit, I dismantled their foundation. Quietly, I transferred my team to a competing firm, gave notice, canceled contracts I had once secured, withdrew investment offers I personally negotiated. By the time Beth realized I was serious, The company was bleeding. Not bankrupt. Not yet, but stumbling. Unstable. And then came the court date. Beth arrived with her mother, both dressed like they were attending a funeral. Susan glared at me like I was the one who betrayed her. My attorney and I sat calmly as the judge reviewed the documents. The lease. The photos. The burner phone logs. The emails between Susan and the man they picked for Beth's upgrade. The fake evidence they tried to plant. It didn't take long. The judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. The car. My account's untouched. Beth got nothing but her name back. And even that, I imagine, felt tarnished. Outside the courthouse, Susan tried one last time. "You think you've won, Harold?" she spat. "You think this is justice? You're pathetic." I looked her in the eye and said, "No. I just think I stopped letting people like you decide what I deserve." Beth didn't say a word. She didn't have to. After that, I moved out of town. Not far, just far enough to breathe again. Bought a modest 2-bedroom home near the lake. Nothing fancy. Quiet neighbors. A wood shop in the garage. Peace. I started taking long walks every morning. Got a part-time job mentoring young project managers remotely. Volunteered on weekends. Built furniture in the evenings and gave most of it away. One afternoon, I got a letter. From Beth. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I was weak. I let my mother get in my head. I thought we needed more money, more comfort. But you were always enough." I read it once. Folded it. Placed it in a drawer. I didn't hate her, but I didn't owe her anything either. A few months later, I heard Susan's firm had filed for bankruptcy. They'd lost 2 major contracts. Creditors were circling. Beth's new man, the one with the Lexus, had quietly left town. I didn't smile. I didn't toast. I just went out to the garage, sanded the edges of a cedar bench I'd been working on, and kept moving forward. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't public. It's living better, without bitterness, without noise. I don't believe in starting over. That's for books and fairy tales. In real life, we don't get clean slates. We get what we build, what we rebuild, and what we choose to carry forward. After everything that happened, the lies, the betrayal, the quiet war I never asked for, I didn't need a fresh start. I just needed solid ground. The house I bought by the lake wasn't much, not compared to what I'd left behind. But it was mine. The floors creaked honestly. The fireplace worked if you knew the trick with the flue. I had a big chair by the window where the sun came in just right before noon. That was enough. And more importantly, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to watch my back in my own home. About 6 months after the final court date, I ran into someone I hadn't expected to see again. It was Susan's sister, Nancy. Unlike her sister, Nancy had always been civil. Not warm, not friendly, but respectful. She was standing in line at the pharmacy when she saw me. "Harold," she said. "Well, I'll be." I nodded. "Nancy." She looked at me a long moment. Then, lowering her voice, said, "I never told them, but I always thought what they did was shameful. Especially Beth. She had a good thing." I didn't know what to say, so I said, "I hope they're doing all right." She gave a half shrug. "Susan's still blaming everyone but herself. Beth moved back in with her a month ago. She lost her job. That boy she ran off with. He left when the money dried up. No surprises there." I nodded. "Well, I hope they find peace." She smiled faintly. "You already have." I didn't need to say anything after that. I spent that summer doing something I hadn't done in a long, long time. Fixing up the house with no deadline and no one watching over my shoulder. I repaired the front steps. Sanded down the old railings. Refinished the cabinets. Built a new kitchen table from reclaimed oak. I even started a small garden, just tomatoes and green beans, nothing fancy. But watching something grow, something that didn't lie or scheme or leave, that felt good. Every few weekends, Melissa and the kids would come by. We'd grill burgers, play checkers, tell the same old stories. It wasn't grand, but it was real. One day, her youngest, Sam, pointed to my tools lined up neatly on the garage wall. "Grandpa," he said, "did you build all this yourself?" I smiled. Every bit of it. He nodded, wide-eyed. "Even the porch swing?" "Even that." He didn't say anything else, just sat in the swing and rocked gently, like it meant something. Maybe it did. In September, I got a call from a local community center. They were renovating an old barn they wanted to turn into a youth workshop space. Carpentry, basic trades, that sort of thing. "We heard you're good with wood," the director said. "I've been called worse." I chuckled. They asked if I'd volunteer to help with benches, maybe teach a weekend course. I said yes. It felt good to be useful again, but more than that, to be trusted. No second guessing, no suspicion, just appreciation for what I brought to the table. By winter, I was spending most Saturdays at the center. Some of the kids were rough around the edges, but they showed up. They listened. They learned. And when they didn't, well, I had time. I got one more letter from Beth that winter. Shorter this time. You were right. I didn't know what I had. I let someone else tell me who you were. I wish I'd known better. I wish I'd stayed. I didn't write back. Because I had nothing left to say. And for the first time in years, that wasn't bitter, it was freeing. In the spring, Melissa and the kids helped me plant a tree in the front yard. A red maple. Why this one, she asked. Because it grows slow, I said. But strong. She smiled. So did I? I didn't win by taking revenge. I didn't need to scream or break things or chase anyone down. I won because I didn't become like them. Because when they plotted and whispered and lied, I listened, I waited, and I quietly took back what was mine. And when the dust settled, I still had my name, my peace, my future. That's not starting over. That's standing tall, right where they hoped I'd fall.